Hi, you guys. Welcome. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio, and we have a really neat show for you today, which I've been waiting to do for quite a while until we found the right person. I think you'll enjoy it a lot, and I just want to kind of set the stage for what our discussion will be by reminding you that we've been talking about the medical industry for a long time on this show, for years, and the reason is because it's having such a massive impact on the health of the population. And while it's great for putting people back together after accidents and traumas of various kinds and correcting a very few congenital defects that actually do require surgery, when it gets into the issues of health and disease and how to stay in better shape, we'll put it politely, it's not really very good. And it's got kind of a monopoly in America on the healthcare system right now. It's considered the most respectable approach to health, and yet it falls so far short of that. So it makes you wonder, such an incompetent system as far as health goes, how did it get the dominant position in the industry? And it really began, and we'll talk to our guest a little bit about this too, but the basic idea is it began around 1910 with something called the Flexner Report, and prior to that, there had been kind of a free market health system in this country, which was in line with the principles of America, founded to be free market, and you get your own choice of what to do. And yeah, you do have a responsibility of checking things out for yourself, finding out what works best for you, but that's way better than you're being forced into a decision that you don't believe in. So the Rockefeller and Carnegie foundations prior to 1910 decided this is a really bad system because we're not in charge of everything, and wouldn't it be great to just dominate the whole system of so-called healthcare and also the medicines that you're supposed to take, especially if they made people sick, so that it was a great business model. And to do that, in cooperation with the government at that time, they started surveying all the existing schools and colleges of healthcare in different ways, not too many of which were based around drug medicine, because in the free market, that's very limited, and there were other things that were working better. And they got all of their information back and decided to fund only the ones that would be based around drug medicines, and then they would control the manufacture and sale of drugs as well. It would be a really great system. And so that's been going on since that time. They effectively eliminated most of their competition, but there was a guy born in Canada in 1845, and his name was Daniel David Palmer, and he ended up discovering a whole different system of healthcare based on the idea that the body was not just a piece of meat that was temporarily alive. It had something that he called innate intelligence. And this was a huge step forward, and he found out about the importance of adjusting the spinal column to let the spinal cord, which goes through it and feeds all the organs, not be impinged, and found out that that had an incredible impact on people's health. And he ended up founding chiropractic, as far as I understand it, and we'll ask our guest if he agrees, in the U.S. and worldwide, actually. And then his son, BJ, carried it on, and his grandson, David Daniel Palmer, was the president of the college that he started after that. BJ was the one that incorporated the college. And the chiropractors that evolved from those discoverers are one of the few groups that actually was able to not get washed away by the monopoly of the drug medicine cartel. And it's doing a lot of good in this country. And the chiropractors end up being the people that are innovators and discoverers in a lot of areas of healthcare that end up helping millions of people, and they're still succeeding in this country in spite of the medical industry domination of the whole thing. So I wanted to get a great representative of that profession on the show to just share with you what it's really about, because I just have a kind of an outsider's view of it in a way. And we found one that had been a friend of Doug's prior to his, I was going to call it an accident, but as you know, it wasn't really an accident, his car crash. And after the crash, this chiropractor was one of the main people that helped him recover. His name is Dr. Ben Sweeney, and he's been what he terms a wellness chiropractor, teaching a lot more than just doing adjustments to patients that really want to radically change their health for the better. He's been doing that for more than 14 years. He's teaching all aspects of health, including virtual appointments that you guys might be interested in, that beyond people that are just living in the local area. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to learn a lot and get a little bit inspired about what chiropractic is from Dr. Ben Sweeney. So welcome, Ben, and thanks for being on the show. It's going to be fun to talk.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. Great introduction, by the way. You mentioned yourself as being an outsider, but from the introduction, you seem to know more about chiropractic than most of my colleagues. So yeah, I was really delighted to hear the intro and how much you know about chiropractic and where it's been, and more importantly, I think where it's going, and the existing allopathic, or maybe it's better to say allopathetic model that we exist in.
Right.
And hopefully how chiropractic can emerge as really the leaders in true healthcare, or at least part of the team of leadership that needs to emerge that can really take health to the next level, and just provide a healthcare system where people are empowered, they know what they're doing and how their body works, and they get to be the ultimate captains of their own ship. So
yeah, I mean, it's perfect for a culture based on individual freedom and responsibility. And what I'd like to do, kind of as a way to get into it, is let's go back before you were a chiropractor and before you even heard about it, and what things in your earlier life, led up to that, through whatever steps you want to mention, as going back to as far as you want, and then we'll look at where you are now, what that's about, and where you're going.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was raised in East Tennessee. I was born there and kind of moved all over the place, and I remember the question early on where people just said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And
Right.
I just always said a doctor. I think that sounded cool. I thought that was what you were supposed to be if you were going to succeed. And underneath that, I really wanted to help people. I think that was sort of in my heart from the beginning. I just didn't know what that looked like. And when I was raised, you got sick, you go to the doctor, you take a pill or you take a potion or whatever. That was just kind of our upbringing. So I thought doctor meant the white lab coat and the prescription pad, or maybe surgeon. And I just didn't really know that chiropractic existed. And what I had heard of it, didn't really think too highly of. I thought it was kind of quackery and, alternative medicine or whatever you want to call that. But I was in college and kind of at that critical point where I was needing to make a decision about what to do with my life and which route to go. I was in a pre-med program in undergrad, and I did an internship. As part of that program, I had to do an internship at a hospital. And my first night, there was a lady that was overdosing. She tried to overdose on Tylenol, and the treatment for that is activated carbon charcoal. I had to squirt charcoal up a lady's nose for about 6 hours.
Wow.
And I was standing there squeezing the bottle and looking around at the environment and all the so sick people. And it occurred to me, most of those people were there not really due to the fact that they were genetically predisposed to all the conditions. They were just making the wrong choices. And maybe there's a way we could prevent people from getting into this situation and needing this type of dangerous and expensive and virtually ineffective care in a lot of ways. And I think that was really God's way of opening me up to chiropractic, and maybe what else is out there that I can be a doctor and help people and not have to deal drugs all day. So
I think your sound for me may have cut out for a minute because I didn't understand. Were you actually getting into the beginning of medical school when you got in that situation, or what was that?
I was on the pre-medicine track. So
Okay.
it was the point to where I would need to start filling out applications for med school. Didn't know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. I was really lost. I was running a health club, so I was always interested in fitness and healthcare and nutrition. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was probably going to be a doctor just because that was what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
And then chiropractic found me. I had a back injury while I was playing basketball in college, and the chiropractor that I went to seemed to love his job and like his life, and he was in good shape. And even though I didn't understand chiropractic, it seemed like maybe a better fit. So that's when I started kind of sniffing around the profession.
Right. And then you tried to find what was the best school to go to, I guess, at that point?
I did, and I remember very distinctly, me and my dad, we went down to Life University, which is an amazing school and really I think probably maybe the premier school along with Palmer in the country. And we went down for a visit, and I remember wondering, what in the heck am I doing here? There were people talking about adjusting babies and allergies going away and people's overall health improving. And I thought chiropractic was neck and back pain. So this sounded really foreign and weird to me, but something inside was like, you know what, just go. And I can't describe it much better than that. There's just something inside. God was just saying, just go, just do it, just submit, surrender, go. And they called me Doubting Thomas throughout school because I was very, prove it to me that if you take pressure off of that nerve, that the lungs will work better, and prove to me that babies need chiropractic, and prove to me that this, I was very dogmatic about trying to have everything proven to me. And the reality is the double-blind tested, the study gold standard that we're held to is basically a drug-based model where it's a placebo versus an active drug. So you can't call it real research unless it's done with drugs, which is completely ridiculous. There's no way to double-blind an adjustment or an adjuster. So I just had to go by faith, and what I knew inside me was the right thing. So.
Now, this was when you were at Life Chiropractic College,
It was, yeah.
And where's that located?
It's in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And then Marietta. So I did the first 2 years there, and then the school was having some accreditation concerns, which was never turned out to be anything, but I didn't stick around for the dust to settle, so we moved out to California, and I finished the other half, the second 2 years out in California, Palmer.
At Palmer, okay.
Yep.
And that was Palmer's branch that they added by buying that school, right?
Correct. And it's strange philosophically, the Palmer West school was less, it was seen to be more medical than chiropractic, and where Life was much more chiropractic and technique and philosophy, with some medical stuff that you have to learn to pass boards. So I felt like it kind of gave me the best of both worlds. We got a good, strong adjusting and hands-on technique base, and then we got a strong medical background in California. So good mix. So
then what happened after that?
So then after that, I called every chiropractor. I got my license. I called every chiropractor in Nashville and every chiropractor in Charlotte. And I knew those were the two cities I wanted to live in. And the first opportunity was in Charlotte. So a guy responded to me and said, come out, you can start your practice in my office. And I thought I was going to go set the world on fire. And all I had to do was show everyone my license, and I'd be able to save the world. And it did not work that way. So I was seeing about 2 patients a week, and which I was providing them great care, but I'm not really making an impact on the world. Didn't know how to run a business, how to get new patients, how to communicate what I did. So I had an opportunity to have a practice in Nashville. There was a guy that had multiple clinics, so I came to run his clinic in Nashville in 2005. So I went from 3 patients a week to about 380 patients a week overnight. So it was a good trial by fire, if you could say that.
So you didn't really have to learn how to attract patients.
No, it was pretty much
the way you do it is go to another office.
Yeah, you just show up. And when I say trial by fire, the office caught fire the day I signed my contract. So that should have been an omen, because about a year later, I got a letter from Blue Cross saying that I was being investigated for fraud. I'm kicked out of the network, and the authorities will be contacting me shortly. So obviously I was blindsided by this, but he was billing illegally underneath my provider ID number, $800 per visit to patients, and Blue Cross did not like that very well, and they thought it was me because he was billing underneath my number. So I spoke to their lawyers and told them what I knew, and they understood. They figured out his scheme pretty quickly. He would get new graduates and bill under their number and just bill through the nose. So that was, I learned a lot of what not to do in my first 2 years. And, I started my own practice about 10 miles south in Franklin, and it's been amazing. I can't really see, God's blessed me in so many ways, and it's been tough and been a struggle. My wife's health has really struggled at times, and we just have kind of worked through it. So
So when you moved to the Charlotte practice, that was nobody else. That was just your office, right?
It was me. I was renting a room in another guy's office. So I went to Goodwill, and I furnished my office from Goodwill and used a portable table and just tried to set up. But yeah, that didn't work out so well.
So at that point, you had to go back to the other lesson that you had gotten around before and figure out how to get new patients, right?
Correct.
So how did you figure out to do it?
So I bought a massage chair from maybe eBay or whatever. It's kind of like you'd see at the airport. And I literally I cold called every business in about a 10-mile radius, and I carried a massage chair up the stairs to every office building I could, and just did free 10-minute chair massages for about a year to a year and a half, just to meet people, talk to people. And that was sort of how I got my name out there, I guess. And then that progressed to being able to do seminars and workshops and events and patient dinners and speaking engagements. So it just kind of progressed as things grew. So
okay.
And I don't own a massage chair anymore, which is fantastic.
All right. But part of what made this possible was that chiropractors had been fighting for recognition from the healthcare system, right? And people could actually get it to recognize the treatment on their insurance.
Correct.
They didn't have to bring in cash.
I think in some ways that was the best and worst thing that ever happened to chiropractic.
Yeah, worse because they have some kind of control over what you do, right?
Absolutely. When you can reimburse for it, you can control it and you can manage it. So early on in the 1920s, chiropractors were actually jailed for performing medicine without a license. So there were hundreds of chiropractors that were actually served time in jail for helping patients with a non-medically approved treatment. So we sort of swam upstream for years, decades, all along. And then in about the 1980s, what they call the Mercedes 80s, reimbursement actually accepted chiropractic care due to patient demand. So many people wanted it and had results that they allowed them on the insurance plan. And then it, instead of becoming a vitalistic profession where people came just for better overall health, it became a managed, controlled neck and back pain profession.
Because those were the only things that were recognized by the government. Right?
Those were guidelines you had to bill under. You couldn't treat for allergies or immune function or for overall health and wellness. You had to treat neck and back pain. Headaches was even considered controversial. So it was very, very narrow in terms of scope.
Yeah.
A lot of chiropractors made a lot of money. So then a lot of students went into chiropractic because of the money, not because of the results or the patient care or the philosophy. They wanted a job, which means they don't know much about chiropractic. They just want to make an income. So now we're at a point in our profession where we have a lot of kids. Now that reimbursement is gone and insurance kind of stinks, deductibles are so high, these kids don't really know. Now they're going to work other jobs. So
okay, so you're saying for a while insurance really covered most of everything that you did?
For a while they covered everything. So
well, now wait a minute. Before that, they covered just neck and back stuff, right?
Correct.
And then what happened to make them cover more?
Well, that's still really the case today. So if you bill for chiropractic services to Blue Cross or to Cigna, they really have to have an active neck or back pain musculoskeletal complaint. There has to be a reasonable, usually a 10 to 12 visit expectation of resolution or maximal medical care. But the good thing, I think, in a way, is deductibles have gotten so high that even if you have 30 visits of chiropractic care, you have to meet your deductible first. So you're essentially a cash patient. So we went from 3 years ago, I was about 80% insurance in terms of our reimbursement. Now we're about 17% insurance. So we're mostly a cash-based practice, which is great because I don't work for the insurance company. Now I work for the patient. I can just do what's best for them. They get better results. We can treat them for whatever their goals are versus what the insurance company's goals are. And I don't have to chase down a third-party payer. It's really, I think it's going to be the best of both worlds.
So how do you deal with the decision of whether to just dump the insurance companies completely or keep the 17%?
We have some Medicare patients still, which makes up a big portion of that 17%. I kind of have a heart for those folks because a lot of them are on fixed incomes. They do pay us $22 a visit or, whatever from Medicare. So I've struggled with that because I still have to play the Medicare game with the Medicare patients. I would like to, but a lot of those people would never be able to come in if they had to pay $35, $40 a visit. So,
and what if they're not done in 12 visits?
Then we have to switch them to a cash-based, look, your insurance only pays so much, and then now we have to, if you want to continue care or you want to wait until your next flare-up, then we can use your Medicare. So
because it's a different complaint at that point, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And two, once you go cash, you have a lot of patients that really value the care. They're not just only coming in because they have a $5 copay. They're coming because they want to get healthier. So thereby, the ones that tend to pay out of pocket tend to get the best results in a weird way. So.
Yeah, and I can see both sides of it because people are so trained now that healthcare should be free because actually they're paying more for it through taxes and everything.
And getting less for it.
Yeah, and are getting hurt by it. And
exactly.
And you're trying to say that no, it should be something that you have to budget and pay for.
Absolutely. I mean, anything we want to of value, anything we want to keep long term has to be maintained and it has to be invested in. So I have a firm belief that we have two assets in this world. We have time and we have health. And that's the two things we uniquely own that are ours that really impact our lives the most. There's our time and our health. And I think if you lose your health, that massively impacts your time, not only length of life, but also quality and life in your years. So money is an asset. Money's a tool, really. It's a utility to give us more time and more health. And I think that we kind of have a backwards view on what it takes to get and stay healthy sometimes.
So do you find a lot of people coming to you who think that chiropractic is just for if your back got strained or something like that, and you have to educate them about why it's more than that?
Yeah, almost every case that comes in still kind of has, you're sort of a spine mechanic. So root something out, and it's up to you to put it back in. And unfortunately, most of the cases we see, the problem's been there for years. It's just now manifesting, or it's reoccurring. They had a car wreck when they were in their teens, or they fell off of a bicycle, or they were a C-section delivery when they were a baby. They think about 70% of C-sections cause pretty severe upper cervical misalignments. Even though they go to undiagnosed, the kid shows up with reflux or with colic or some other unknown symptom. And so a lot of these problems started earlier. They just now start to manifest. Very much like a cavity in your tooth.
It causes that in the baby, you're saying?
Correct. So some German studies and now some studies that are being done in the U.S. are showing that forceful, whether it's with forceps or just an aggressive OB, and sometimes if the cord is wrapped around the neck and the baby's struggling, then force needs to be used. But the goal of the hospital is to produce a live, healthy baby, not to preserve proper mechanics or keep the nervous system healthy. Their goal is to keep your baby alive, and they do a great job at that in some cases. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of kids, especially with C-section rates on the rise. The nerves that leave the top part of the neck, that's your brain stem is at the top part of your neck. So it controls all of your functions you don't have to think about consciously. So your breathing, your heart rate, your digestion, your immune function to a large degree, your sinuses, your inner ear, it's all really controlled by the top of the neck. So it's a very delicate and very important part of the overall health picture. If you remember Christopher Reeve, when he fell off the horse, he injured the top part of his neck. So the injury was there, but it affected his breathing. He had to have a respirator to breathe. He had to have a pacemaker for his heart, his immune system. He died of a strep infection, essentially. So that's an extremely important part of the anatomy.
And why would there be more trauma to that area in a C-section than a normal birth?
That is a great question. In a normal birth, the mom, through the vaginal wall, the mom is helping to push the baby out. So there's kind of a push-pull relationship. In a C-section, you're literally just pulling the baby with the head, you're pulling the baby out, which the shoulders are about twice as wide as the head. So they're using the head as a lever to pull the baby. They think
Wow.
the average birth puts about 14 to 18 pounds of pressure on the neck, where C-sections can put up to, 2 to 3, 4 times that amount, depending on how aggressive they are.
Is that because they want to minimize the amount of cutting they're doing, so they're making a small area to get in to grab the baby from?
I think nobody wants to be the butcher in town. So keeping the scar minimized, I think is,
okay.
I don't know all the reasons for that. I think there's obviously good reasons for C-sections in some cases, but a lot of them are done just for convenience and for...
Yeah, not that you have to make the next golf game or something, right?
You're right. Yep. I got a tee time in an hour and a half, so we got to get this thing going, right?
Yeah.
Sadly,
So, how early can you start working on a baby who's had that happen to them?
Yeah, good question. I've been to the hospital probably a dozen or two, maybe a couple dozen times. So we have patients that will go into labor and they'll give us a call and say, "Hey, we just had the baby. Can you come by and check them out or adjust them if they need it?" And we'll go by at birth. And I have a guy that's in his mid-90s that comes in. So we have a pretty wide range in terms of health complaints. And the adjustment on a baby, by the way, is sort of like testing a tomato at the grocery store. So if you've ever tested a tomato to see for ripeness, that's about the amount of pressure that it takes. So I'll usually use my pinky. We have a little instrument that has like a little clicking. So it's extreme, gentle. The babies usually sleep through the entire adjustment.
Wow.
But I've seen babies with really chronic reflux. Their head is stuck in almost a torticollis type position, ear infections, sinus, all kinds of strange issues that you would never associate with the neck or the spine or the nervous system that get better when you release the body to do what it's trying to do naturally. Because we're designed to be healthy. Our brain tells our body how to work, and if it works better, if things communicate appropriately and effectively, the end result is that you're healthier. So
yeah, and I would think the baby's bones are kind of soft at that point, right? So there's a lot less danger that anything would fracture because they're spongy, kind of, right?
They're very spongy. It's very mobile, so the biggest impact is they don't have years of scar tissue wear and tear and damage. So you take a person who had a C-section and then they fell off their bike and then they had 2 car wrecks and now they sit at a desk and text all day. Right. That 40-year-old is much harder to adjust because their body's gotten used to that pattern. So it's learned that this is normal. So you're having to retrain the entire structure to hold the new position. So babies are much more pliable. They tend to complain a lot less. So no, that's probably the best part of my job is getting to work with kids. So
wow, how neat. Well, one thing that I forgot to ask about the educational part, so kind of jumping back to that for a minute. A lot of people who don't really know much about the validity of chiropractic are saying, well, chiropractors don't really get a medical education, right? So there's so much they don't know. I mean, but they've fallen into the thing of thinking that the medical education is drug-centered, which means it's cutting-edge science, but also that the physiology and anatomy and biology and chemistry and all these basics are not done somehow as thoroughly. So that's one half of the question to respond to that. But the other half is by the conventional drug-centered training and all these things, what they call thoroughly, is also a subtle kind of conditioning that maybe the chiropractors wouldn't want if they understand a different approach to health.
You're right.
So kind of wanted to look at both of those angles.
Yeah. So I had that initial, when I was looking into chiropractic school, I thought it was like massage with maybe a little extra training or maybe a mail order degree, or maybe you go to Jamaica and get something online. I didn't think it was,
and you push harder in smaller areas than a massage.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the reality is you have a biology pre-med undergrad, so you have to have organic chemistry 1 and 2 and A&P and biochem to get into school. And then we actually take about 400 more classroom hours than traditional medical school. So if you look apples to apples, we have dissection, we have biochem, we have microbiology and A&P. So coursework wise, there's actually a little more in chiropractic school. The difference is when they split into a pharmacology route where they learn drugs and basic surgeries, we split into like a chiropractic technique route. So there's a difference there. And then the other difference is they do a 4-year residency, and we don't do that. So once our 4-year program is over, then we're licensed, and after a preceptorship, you're free to go.
Right.
And then the biggest thing too is people don't understand is the danger factor with chiropractic, because I always get you got to find a really good one because it can be really, really dangerous. And I heard about my aunt in Milwaukee whose cousin's uncle's ex-roommate had a stroke, and there are some cases of that, but I pay more for car insurance on one car than I pay for my malpractice insurance.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's about $1,100 a year. So the cost.
And what would it be if you were a medical doctor? Do you know?
$30,000, $50,000. If you're an OB, you're in the hundreds of thousands. So exponentially more. We have the cheapest malpractice rates of any other healthcare provider. And actuaries are really good at determining risk. So if we were risky, we were dangerous, people were getting hurt and killed and maimed, then our insurance. That's
really different than the impression some medical doctors give of chiropractic.
Oh, completely.
Don't let them touch you because they're going to break your neck right away. It's quite dangerous.
And if you look at the data, taking one aspirin is about 4 times more dangerous than having a neck adjustment. So the most dangerous neck adjustment still pales in comparison to an aspirin.
Wow.
And on the issue of stroke, because just real quickly, I wanted to.
Take your time. It's fine.
If you have a neck adjustment, you can have a stroke. There are cases of people who have, who basically have a clot that can be dislodged. So they're essentially a ticking time bomb. So that clot in the vertebral artery can be dislodged from really any type of movement. So it can be a neck adjustment, it can be watching fireworks, it can be backing out of your driveway when you're turning around, it could be watching any kind of washing your hair at the hair salon. So that movement, there's no screening tool to make sure every patient doesn't have that rare condition, and there's really no way to prevent that. It's going to happen at some point. Unfortunately, it does sometimes happen, rarely in chiropractic offices. But
what are the statistical probabilities of that?
I think the last I heard, it was about 1 in 4 million neck adjustments.
Okay.
So
is there any kind of first aid you could do if you ever saw that happen?
Fortunately, I don't even know a colleague personally that's ever had that happen to them. I think I've done about 400,000 neck adjustments. You call 911. So there are signs that would happen, almost stroke type symptoms that we are aware of. And if you can get care early and get them to the hospital where the hospital shines, if you can get them under that emergency medical care quick enough, then their outcome is pretty good. So
Right. Yeah, so I mean, it's so rare that it's not a major factor, and the insurance company probably knows that if the person got a stroke, it's not because of what you were doing.
Driving to my office is exponentially more dangerous than getting treated in the office. If you look at the data. So
now, when you talk about not going right into practice instead of having the drug training.
Mm-hmm.
What drug training do you need in order, because you're going to have most of your patients nowadays are addicted to multiple medical drugs, if I'm not incorrect. And so, especially if you're going to talk to them about health, what do you need to know about the individual drugs these days, or do you?
I'm glad you asked that. It angers me in a way that part of my scope of practice is I really can't advise patients on their medications, so which ones to take or which ones to get off of. I have to sort of dance around. But a lot of the time, like I'll ask a patient who's on a statin drug, for instance, I'll say, so when they put you on the statin, did they also put you on coenzyme Q10? So are you on CoQ10? Because the basic pathway of the effectiveness and the way that statins work is they block coenzyme QA reductase, so it blocks your absorption of CoQ10. So if your doctor doesn't put you on CoQ10 but gives you a statin, they don't know even the basic biochemistry of the drugs that they're doling out. So I'm not a druggist, I'm not a pharmacist, I don't know everything about drugs, but in a lot of ways we tend to know a little more than some of the people that are prescribing and managing some of these drugs. So the patient has to get educated. You know, sadly, you have to know what you're putting in your body. You have to know as much or more about your health than your doctor does, and that's sad, but that's reality. So don't take my word for it. Don't take your physician's word for it. You're in charge of your own health in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So if the statin blocks CoQ10, the big thing that it also blocks is the body's natural, essential ability to synthesize cholesterol, right, in the liver.
I mean, we can spend 2 hours on cholesterol alone. If you want.
I know. Have you ever heard of a doctor named John Bergman?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Right, he's really good, and he does a lot of lectures online, which are real popular. And one of them, I mean, there's several relating to cholesterol, and he's saying that, as we know, cholesterol is like the main part of the solid part of the brain.
It is,
as well as the
dry weight is cholesterol.
Yeah, the nerve sheaths have a lot of cholesterol, and cell walls and little things like that.
Sex hormones, your immune system.
So even if they were taking the CoQ10, it's probably not enough to offset all the damage of the statins.
Oh, no, you're right. Absolutely not. That's just the basic understanding of how the drugs work. That's what baffles me, is some of the physicians don't even have a baseline understanding of what the drugs do to the body.
Well, I think they've got this specialization attitude that the drug rep is the expert, and they would never not tell you the truth. So what else do you have to know, right?
That's scary, because money drives that whole industry, and you know where that gets us. So.
Yeah. So it would be better if at least everybody read the package insert on every drug and vaccine, right? Yeah,
at least. Hopefully that would change some decision making, but I can't get people to read the back of their food labels sometimes.
I know.
Where they eat. So, but it takes the work that you're doing, where you're getting this information out to the public, because CBS News and Fox News and CNN and even the New York Times don't disseminate accurate information. And I truly believe people are not sick because they don't have enough information. They're sick because they're getting the wrong information.
Yeah. Well, those outlets you mentioned, like the New York Times, it explains why if you don't get your kid every vaccine, they're going to be killing other kids by exposure.
Which is such nonsense. Such nonsense. And again, we could spend an hour on that topic alone easily, but people are just, they're sick because they're getting the wrong information. We always say knowledge is power, and I tend to disagree with that a little bit, because knowledge is not powerful. It's the actions that we take based on accurate knowledge that really is powerful. So you got to take action, and you got to take action based on knowledge that is actually real and accurate and non conflict of interest ridden, I guess.
So you talked about the scope of practice and what you're allowed to get into or not get into, and that you can't tell people to get off or onto any particular drugs. What about, can you say anything at all about vaccines? And then the other question is, how much can you get into details of lifestyle, what they eat and other stuff like that? Yeah,
so we go full bore into lifestyle and their detox pathways and their exercise and stress level. That's our forte, and I don't know that anyone can touch us when it comes to that in terms of in the medical world. With vaccines, I did a vaccine workshop about a month ago where I stood and delivered for about an hour and a half about everything about vaccines. And I give a disclaimer at the beginning that says, look, I'm not your medical doctor. My job is not to tell you what to do and not to do. It's your decision, and you have to make the choice. You have to live with a child who gets measles, and you also have to live with a child that has inflammatory brain disease or autism or allergies or whatever else. So it's us. We have to make our own decisions. But I mean, I spend a good hour and a half making a good argument that the vaccines that we have probably did not have near the impact that they're given, the credit that they're given. Most of the diseases that we vaccinate against, if they're not just a nuisance in the beginning anyway, they were virtually on their way out at the time that the vaccines were introduced. So they show up at the 11th hour, they get all the credit, and then we use that information to beat people to death with the fact that they have to get all these shots in order to stay healthy. 69 vaccines by the time we turn 5 years old, and that just doesn't make sense logically. So
yeah, amazing. And almost no one actually knows what's in them. I mean, it takes the time to really find out.
Yeah, I mean, I told a patient just the other day that the MMR is prepared with human lung fibroblasts. So it's basically aborted fetal cells.
Right.
Aborted fetal tissue is used in the preparation of the MMR, and she had no idea. And even as a Christian, as a believer, she couldn't believe that was being used in her vaccines.
Well, no, I mean, normal people would never believe that.
No.
I mean,
and I think it speaks to the fear that maybe everything I'm being told is not real, and maybe I can't put all my faith in a system, that if my health fails, then I don't have anywhere to turn. I think there's some of that. I think it's the onus is now on me that I have to get educated and do the right things, and it's a lot easier just to believe that the medical system's got my best interest and they'll take care of me if I need them.
Yeah.
Go on to
I mean, I think part of the reason people can't grasp what's happening is it's so strange and so unacceptable to any normal way of thinking.
Right.
Like, you know, and language is being used to keep everybody unaware of what's going on too, because you even look at the words they use, like fetal cells. That sounds like some synthetic thing that you'd maybe buy at a lab store or something. It's a baby that's been ripped to pieces, sometimes while it's alive, and then they sell the pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beyond imagination, really.
It's really bizarro world, and the more you know, the scarier I think it gets sometimes. So, I mean, I understand. I get it, that I'd rather just not know sometimes.
Yeah. I know, I understand that.
It's bliss, but it's also deadly. So
yeah, but it lets you know how the patients feel about it, why they're not just jumping up and down to know about it.
Right.
And that's before you get into the insect and rodent DNA and monkey kidney cells and all that stuff.
Yeah, the heavy metals, and you can go on. And
right. Yeah, food preservatives. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
It's funny to me, like if you gave a baby that cocktail, if you gave a baby that to drink, you would be put in jail for endangering the life of that child. But if you inject it into their arm, then you're considered a great parent, and you're doing the best you can do to.
You'd probably get the death penalty in a lot of states if you made them drink.
You definitely would.
Yeah.
And probably well deservedly, I guess.
Yeah. So if you really, when you said you guys shine in the lifestyle, educational field, teaching people how to make that better. When do you do that? I mean, if somebody just comes in for an adjustment and you've got quite a few adjustments to do during the day, when are you going to teach them this lifestyle stuff?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We do a lot of that in like a seminar format, so very similar to like the vaccine workshop. The month before that, I did a nutrition workshop where we talk about the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting and all the supplements and how the body works and meal planning and recipes. So we do that in workshop format. We have an online platform that our patients have free access to. We disseminate recipes and videos on Facebook, and we ask the patient what their goals are, because we have some patients that come in, they just want their headaches to go away. They don't want to change diet. I just want my headaches better. And we say, okay, that's fine. If you want something better, deeper, bigger, or more long-lasting, then please tell us and we'll help walk you through that. So it depends on their goals. And some patients come in, they want to lose weight, they want to get off thyroid medication, they want to reverse their type 2 diabetes. Then we will work with them and show them most of these changes. It sounds almost kind of an audacious claim to say reverse your type 2 diabetes or get off your blood pressure medication, but I can't even overstate how easy that is for most patients. If they will follow a few simple guidelines and make a few changes, those are very, very reachable goals in a very short amount of time. I've had people come off their blood pressure medicine in 1 week, and I've had people reverse diabetes in 30 days. And it's almost criminal how simple it is, and nobody's teaching it.
You want to give an example of the kind of thing that would help them do that?
Yeah, so like we'll say for type 2 diabetes, we know that person has lived a lifestyle and has a many years of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, chronic inflammatory disease within their body, even though it may not show up on a blood test. So their pancreas is more or less just giving out, and their body's running on carbohydrates. So we starve the body of carbohydrates while we inject and fuel the body with vegetables and healthy fats, which are avocados and nuts and seeds and eggs and healthy healthy meat and coconut oil and MCT oil and things that we can pour into the body. And then if we can restrict, I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but with intermittent fasting, where we restrict our eating to just an 8-hour window, huge effect in insulin resistance and reducing metabolic syndrome, and using the body, teaching the body to use ketones for fuel as opposed to glucose and sugar for fuel. And the body changes in 2 to 3 days. We see changes in most people. It's really, and there's tougher cases that take longer, but miracles happen all the time, it seems.
Yeah. So a lot of this is switching from, like you said, one kind of fuel to another. Just to bring into the discussion people that may not be familiar with what this really means, because everybody says, well, carbohydrates, and the meaning they've got in their mind may vary. Something, it just means donuts or spoons of sugar, or, some other ones think it means honey, or so. Just to go back to the beginning, sure. What are carbohydrates? What are they good for? And why are they necessary or not necessary?
Yeah, you're asking great questions. So carbs, it's a sort of an umbrella term. When you look at carbohydrates, it's not just bread or pasta or cereal. It's also crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastries, oatmeal, cereal, donuts, bagels, everything that almost comes from a box, bag, or any kind of processed source is going to be loaded with simple carbohydrates. And our body will preferentially use carbohydrates over fat any day of the week. Anytime there's carbs in the system, your body will prefer to use that for fuel. So it really comes down to whether you're a fat burner or you're a sugar burner. And we know that sugar burners are people who eat too many carbs. They have cravings, they have fatigue, they have weight gain, they have diabetes, they have hormone problems, they have fatigue issues, they have inflammatory skin reactions. That it literally drives inflammation. And you've probably taught on this before, that inflammation is sort of the underlying cause of almost every disease of modern man. So the trick is we want to turn your body from a sugar burner into a fat burner. And we can do that by taking out the carbohydrates and adding the veggies and the healthy fats and moderate protein. Now protein, I see a lot of patients that will make the low carb switch, and they'll lose weight, and they'll lose maybe 5 or 10 or 15 pounds, but then they'll get stuck. And the reason most of them get stuck is because they're eating too much protein. So what most people don't know is that excess protein actually turns into fat, or actually turns into sugar. And if that sugar is not used, it's turned into fat. So we don't want too much protein. You just want enough that your body needs to get you to the next meal. So for women, that's usually about 15 to 20 grams, maybe. For men, it's 20 to maybe 30, depending on activity. But that's about it. So it's high fat and veggies, plenty of water, moderate to low protein, and very low carbohydrates.
Really interesting I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but just to interject.
Please.
A lot of the fitness people, especially tending toward the bodybuilding angle,
sure.
They say you got to have like 1.8 grams per pound or something of protein, which is like 6 times what you just recommended.
Yes.
And so you see them getting really big and strong, but they can't maintain it, and they also have many frequent health problems long run.
Absolutely.
But they think that you have to have that much protein to get strong.
Yeah, and that's just ridiculous. And if you're eating lots of veggies, you're going to get protein anyway. But that's on that point, I'm glad you brought that up. That's why a lot of women will steer away from weight training, because they say, every time I work out with weights, I get big and I get bulky. Well,
Right.
That's not coming from the exercise. It's coming from the overconsumption of carbohydrates and or protein. So if you're eating too much protein, you're going to look big and swollen and bulky and fat, because your body's not able to use fat as a fuel source, because you're storing too much of it and using sugar for fuel.
Not necessarily more functional, though, right?
Correct. Yep.
Interesting. Okay, so I interrupted you, but you were getting into all the source of carbs. And what I understood from your saying the body will preferentially use carbs over fat for fuel is that it seems like it's designed, you would kind of infer this from observation, that it's designed to start with a non-carb source, break it into carbs in the intermediate part of that cycle, and then turn that into energy. And so you're saying, okay, you don't even have to do this first part anymore. And it says, great, that'll be more efficient. I'll just take it from the middle, and it has bad effects, right?
Well, and if you think about it, our ancestors, to get junk food, they used to have to climb a tree, they'd have to fight bees, and they would have to figure out a way to get the honey out of the beehive. That was their source of simple carbohydrates. I mean, and it was.
You mean sugar? You don't mean junk food like processed. You mean just sugar?
Yeah, just sugar. Yeah, that's even a much better source of junk food than we have today.
That's not understood because honey's natural.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm nothing against honey. I think honey's fantastic. It's just in order to get any kind of a sweet or a treat or any sort of a non-fruit or veggie or meat, they would have to literally risk their lives. And now we go to the convenience store, Skittles and candy and junk food everywhere. So. And
the bees were not as friendly at that time.
Yeah, that's true. They had not been as tamed.
You know, a lot of the natural food people think that, well, you have to have this much carb, and the only natural carb is stuff like honey, really concentrated dried fruit, stuff like that. And they still deal with the sugar problems like you're talking about, even though it's natural.
So then the question I get a lot from people is, so what carbs can I eat? Like, is all fruit off the table? Am I never going to be able to eat like a sweet potato ever again? So we have you stick to above ground vegetables, and this is until you reach your health goals. So for some people, they just want to feel better, so they don't have to do this as strictly. And then other people, they want to reverse type 2 diabetes. So we keep the fruits to berries, lemons, limes, avocados, and Granny Smith apples. So any kind of berry, fruits, or blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, lemons, limes, avocados, and Granny Smith apples.
Which means any fruit that doesn't taste really sweet.
Correct. But you'd be amazed, once you change and hack your metabolism to where you're now using...
It starts tasting sweeter, right?
Yeah. I mean, frozen raspberries, are you kidding me? There's no better snack than frozen raspberries. Once you get the Skittles and the bread and the other pastries out of the equation, the other stuff tastes better.
That means higher insulin sensitivity, basically, right?
Absolutely. Yep. It all comes down to reducing inflammation and teaching your body to use fat for fuel.
You know about Dr. Cousins' work with diabetes?
I've heard, but I don't know the details.
He's been on the show for a long time, and what he has been doing, he's a raw food vegetarian person. Raw food vegan, actually, which is a whole other interesting subject. And what he's known for, he's a medical doctor, but he's also into all kinds of other stuff. Southern Arizona retreat place. And he gets mostly type 2 diabetes people. Used to get occasional type 1, some of which can be cured too.
Absolutely.
But not that many. They usually just improve.
Right.
But the type 2 people that came to him, there's a movie online that's really good called Simply Raw, I think. Okay. And what he did is he took a group of patients, put them all on like green juice, and fasted them on just that for a while, and then raw food. In 30 days, they were all cured.
It's amazing.
But they can't go out and eat Big Macs after that, or else they're not going to stay good. Right.
You know, and on that point, some people will kind of shudder behind that. Like, I know I'm never going to eat perfect forever, so why even try? Like, I know I'm going to eat pizza on Friday, so why eat a salad today?
Yeah.
Like, there's no other area of our life that we would do that. It's like, I can't be a perfect parent, so why even have kids?
Well, it's like I might as well smoke because there's smog.
Exactly. Yeah, it's this justification that we'll use it with our health, but we don't use it with our finances or, in our faith or our marriage. I can't be a perfect spouse, so why even try to be a good spouse? Everything's about being good enough. It's not about being perfect. It's about knowing what perfect looks like and just trying to move in the direction of it. And I think people get overwhelmed, or they hide behind this, I just can't do it, so why even try? And they're really missing out. And a lot of change can happen with a very small amount of change, or a lot of results from a small amount of change.
So the diet that you're giving the people who want to get over these diseases and diabetes and other things like that is above ground vegetables, raw or steamed, I assume, right? Either way. And then the non-sweet fruit, not very sweet anyway, and stay on that as long as it's convenient to stay on it until at least you get the results you want. And then don't get off it too far so that you don't relapse, right?
Yeah, and then most people kind of learn their solid yellow lines. They kind of know how many cheat meals they can have before they start to get into that inflammatory state again. Like for me, I know I've got about 3 cheat meals a week. So I can do pizza one day, and I try to do minimal of it, but I can do a burger on one day a week. If I start to get beyond that, I start to feel bad. I start to get more inflamed. My energy level goes down. So you just start to learn how your body works. I mean, you learn how your car works and your cell phone works. We need to learn and experiment and know how our body works too. It's a little more important.
So when you're letting people have those minimal carbs in that diet, is that which reason is it because of? That you need some carbs, or because you just figure nobody has the willpower to just cut them out?
It kind of just, I have a lot of patients that ask, well, I want to do some fruit. I need something sweet. I got to have this. I got to have that. What do I do? And for those people, we say, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, keep it in kind of the berry family. And a lot of them are easy, like carrying snacks too. So if you're going to go on the road, I keep green apples everywhere I go. I keep raw almonds everywhere I go. So I've kind of always got a fuel source at hand. It's kind of like if you take the traditional food pyramid and you flip it upside down, that is the way we should be eating for the most part.
Right. So let's say there was no willpower issue at all, and somebody wanted to experiment to try to get the most ideal result. Would you still tell them they have to eat some carbs or not?
No, I would say you're going to get plenty of carbs from spinach, and you're going to get plenty from broccoli, and if you eat artichokes, and I mean, yeah, you'll get plenty of carbohydrates from the vegetables that you're eating, and then a little bit of grass-fed, free-range organic meat. If you have to do dairy, then raw dairy and keep it fairly minimal. Lots of water, and then add in the good fats. And it's pretty amazing when people make that shift. It takes about 3 days. So after the first 3 days, they're what's called hangry. So they're angry and they're hungry and they're miserable to be around. And I don't like them to come in the office those 3 days. Like, schedule your appointment on the 4th day. Because they're really in a bad mood because their body doesn't know how to convert fat to fuel yet. It's still wanting sugar, and it's not there. But if they can get through those 3 days, then everything starts to change. And not only do patients say they feel better or they're starting to lose weight, but lights get brighter and their smell gets more distinct, and they sleep better and their head is clearer, and it's almost like their whole body just kind of comes out of a fog.
I think this might be related to a lot of other things that don't seem connected, like vision, too, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you heard of Dr. McCullough?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of Joe's.
Well, he believes in ketogenic diet, but he's come up with this variant of it that he thinks is necessary, and he calls it cyclical ketogenic diet.
Yep.
And he's saying that every so many days, I don't remember what it was, you have to have high carb days.
I agree.
Why?
I think once you're in a maintenance phase, I know, like for me, I do a pretty high level of intensity exercise every single day. So every morning I do a pretty high level workout. So on my carb loading days where I just kind of let it rip, and that'll be my pizza day, or that'll be my burger day, or my whatever day, I tend to feel a little more refreshed in my workouts the next day. So I think metabolically, it's a little bit of a good idea to duck and dodge with carbs and fats when you're in a maintenance phase. Now, I think if you're trying to get off blood pressure medicine and you're reversing your diabetes and you have 80 more pounds to lose, you need to kind of stay in ketosis, mild ketosis, as much as you can. But like for me, I can eat a little bit of carbs, and as long as it's not too much, and it doesn't overfill the liver, and I don't want to get too technical with this, but you can still stay in ketosis and still eat some carbohydrates. It's really a matter of how much and when.
Right. Well, so if you go on high carb day for you, would you do it kind of late in the day, and then, so it doesn't get in the way of your workouts feeling too heavy or something like that?
And I also daily, I do what's called intermittent fasting. So I always have a 16-hour window where I try not to eat, and I try to do that every day. So I'll eat my dinner around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and then I don't eat again until about 1 o'clock or so the next day. So breakfast is actually the worst meal of the day when it comes to metabolically. But then on that first meal around noon or 1 o'clock, I try to not overfill my liver. So I try to keep basically a keto-based meal. So high fat, lots of veggies, maybe a salad with some grilled chicken or some egg, avocado, maybe just some lean beef and veggies or something that's very, very high fat, high veggie, moderate protein, low carbohydrate. That's my first meal. And I notice if I do that, I don't really get hungry. So I don't get into like the tiredness after lunch. I stay energized because my body can stay in ketosis. And then for dinner, I'm a lot less stringent. So if I want some dark chocolate, if I want to eat an apple that's not a Granny Smith apple, if that's my burger night, then, I kind of let it rip a little bit on evenings. But again, I'm kind of in a maintenance phase, so that varies.
Okay, and when do you do your workouts?
5:30 every morning. So
okay, so you're always fasted, in other words.
Yes, the first thing I do in the morning, and this is a little secret that your listeners might want to know. The first thing I do in the morning is I get a coffee and I add MCT oil or I scoop coconut oil into the coffee. So what I'm doing is, because I have no sugar in my system and my body's already starting to burn fat for fuel, I'll add a little bit of healthy fat to the coffee so that it helps condition my body to use fat for fuel. So as it's coming in, it's almost like your body says, okay, good, that's what we want to use. Let's keep doing that. So it kind of keeps you in a fat burning mode even through the morning, and it holds you through your workout as well.
Okay, so the body's using fat you're talking about resistance workout, right? Like weights and stuff, calisthenics stuff.
Cardio, resistance, high intensity.
You mix the cardio in with it?
I do. And a lot of my workouts, we teach this in the office too, but a lot of my workouts are some traditional type movements like squats or presses, but we do them in a high intensity, safe, but very high intensity format. So you're getting the cardio and you're also getting the resistance all at the same time. And my workouts are about 20 minutes. 20 to 30 minutes is pretty much all I do.
Wow. So it must be super high intensity.
Within reason. And we have some patients that start out, they've not really worked out and they want to start it. So we have them just sort of, they do like a punching motion or they start slow and then they kind of work their way up. So
Right. Okay, so you're not really separating cardio from resistance training. You're kind of doing them both in a HIIT format, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
Very similar, HIIT or burst or surge training.
Okay.
Do a lot of, and then I play basketball once a week. So I kind of like to vary it, walk the dog kind of stuff occasionally too.
Right. And then what about stretching type stuff, yoga type exercise?
I was doing really good at yoga for a few months. I did it very consistently, and then for time constraints and just making excuses, I kind of got away from it. That is on my next few weeks' goal, is to get back into that. I still do some at the gym, so I do a little stretching daily, but I would like to do more. And then I get, chiropractic adjustments. Part of our chiropractic care is we have patients do warm-ups and stretches before they get adjusted, and then they do strengthening exercises afterwards. So that's part of my weekly care that I get in the office.
So like loosening up the muscles for easier adjustment to start and then tightening them up after that.
Exactly. It's very much like moving teeth. So if you picture you have teeth and they're out of alignment, those ligaments that are holding the tooth out of alignment, so to move it back, you have to retrain the ligaments. Right. Same thing with your spine, although your spine is designed to move and your teeth are not. So we have to retrain those ligaments. So we get everything nice and loose first, and then we do the correction, and then we teach your body to hold the correction. We use vibrating platforms and head weights and things like that.
You heard about a chiropractor in Colorado, I think, named Eric. I'm going to think of the name in a minute. He invented a system called foundation training. Oh yeah,
Eric. I think he was. He did it with another physical therapist, Goodman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the founder. We teach the founder to a lot of patients. That's his core movement and the foundation.
Yeah, that seems really useful.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It retrains your posterior chain, because with sitting and with our lifestyles, we teach our bodies to kind of hunch forward. And then our head kind of slopes. So he teaches you to get your pelvis restored, get your shoulders back, and get your head back up. So it's a really great complement to what we teach in the office.
His workouts are amazingly difficult, even though they look like nothing.
They look like mild yoga.
Yeah.
They feel like weightlifting classes.
Yeah, really different. But it's like if the people are exercising, they usually do sit-ups and stuff, and they don't do any corresponding thing for lower back.
And I do that every day. So part of my training is I do abs, and I do lower back every single workout.
Wow.
Everything starts at your core, including your spinal column. So if you don't keep your core healthy, I think that's true with everything, with marriage and faith and finances. You got to keep the core the healthiest, and that's everything outside. So
right. So are you doing things with patients like your educational format or your seminars and stuff for people that don't live where you are? And
yeah, so we've kind of just gotten this off the ground recently, where we have like a virtual consulting or virtual coaching, whatever you want to call that. But we give you access to me, whether it's by Skype, phone, FaceTime, or email, and then we just work with whatever the patient's goals are. If they want a few recipes and cooking ideas, they want a workout plan, or they want to overhaul their whole health and restock their kitchen and get off medication, reverse disease, and reverse it, whatever, then that our goal is to help them reach their goals. So
right. I want to get back to that in a minute, but something just came back to my mind that I'd forgotten. You brought up so many important things, and you were talking about statin drugs and cholesterol, and I'm assuming you would agree that cholesterol is not an evil thing. That there's a reason the body makes it.
So inflammation, yeah.
Yeah, so even though you have to tell people to make their own decision, do their study, go back to their doctor, and you can't, within the scope of practice, tell them not to take statins. But
that's one that I would maybe reach out on a limb and say, don't take statins. But unless you've had a cardiovascular event, so if you have a stent, if you've had a bypass surgery, then there's a chance you may need to be on the statin. But if that's not the case, there's no data, no evidence, and really no common sense that supports being on a statin drug to prevent heart disease, cholesterol issues, or...
Well, I mean, really, it looks like there's no correlation between high cholesterol and heart problems at all.
None. In fact, if you have a heart attack, your chance of surviving the heart attack is actually better if your cholesterol is slightly higher.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat protect. More heart attacks happen in people that have low to normal cholesterol than have high cholesterol. About 57%.
Exactly. Low cholesterol is a danger factor, right?
Totally. And the guidelines are set way too low. When they dropped it from 220 to under 200, that gained them about 30 million new customers overnight. So it was a marketing push, and it also increased rates of cancers, because a lot of cancers, when you suppress cholesterol, you have increased risk of type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's disease or brain dysfunction problems and certain cancers. And it's really going to be a huge, you don't even want to call it controversy, it's just common sense that once that gets out, that'll be known as one of the biggest scams ever purported on the American population.
It's only controversy because you're not supposed to know about it, not because it's unclear, right?
True.
I would think that low cholesterol from statins would also increase things like peripheral neuropathy.
Absolutely. And rhabdomyolysis or back pain, because we know those statin drugs, when they artificially lower your cholesterol, that your body can't make testosterone, it can't make estrogen, your body, it can't. And if you think about it realistically, the arterial wall is sort of like drywall. If you want to picture like drywall, and when you eat inflammatory foods, it takes a nick out of the drywall. So it's kind of cutting the inside of the arterial wall, where your body is using cholesterol almost as like plaster to help seal and heal the arterial wall. So your body's trying to protect itself from you. So having high cholesterol or lowering it with a statin drug doesn't reverse or doesn't stop the underlying process. So
right, and if you're making it constantly repair the inside of the blood vessel, then it could eventually clog it up, right? And then you blame the cholesterol for the heart attack or whatever it is.
Yep, you're blaming the symptom and not the actual cause.
Right, and since your body has, I would say, not just intelligence but consciousness,
right?
Kind of beyond what they talked about, then it's having to make strategy decisions. Like, I'm low on cholesterol. My brain is telling me that it doesn't have enough. There's danger it might lose certain brain function if we don't get the cholesterol back that it needs.
Right.
And I got to make a decision between the brain and the feet, where we've got cholesterol on the nerve sheaths.
Or the brain and the testosterone levels, or
right.
the internal organs, or your body will choose, because you are your brain. So
well, I'm just thinking of all the people that I've just been in touch with recently who have the problems in their legs and feet that are generally called peripheral neuropathy, and the pins and needles or losing sensation, and they're on statin drugs, and I'm thinking that the nerve sheaths are, being sacrificed.
Absolutely. You're losing the raw material to keep the nerve sheath healthy. So it just makes basic common sense. But
and that's what drug that it's not very dangerous to get off of, right? I mean, there's really no bad symptoms.
Oh, other than making your doctor upset with you, there's no symptoms.
Yeah, the doctor may have to kill you, but other than that, no really bad.
Yeah. And what I ask patients to do is said, okay, if you're worried about your doctor, then go to him and say, okay, doc, give me the numbers. If I'm to take this drug, tell me the data that shows if I take this drug, it's going to reduce my risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attack, or stroke. And if he's honest with you and he actually knows the data, there's about a 1% to 2% reduction using them preventatively for cardiovascular events, heart disease, and stroke. There's about a 1% to 2% chance that it'll prevent you from having a disease. And then you're suppressing your immune system, you're weakening your brain function. So it just really, and plus, if you want to lower your cholesterol, if that's really the issue that you're wanting to attack, reduce your carbohydrate consumption, because that's what's causing the inflammation that's scarring the artery, creating the plaster. Take red yeast rice and vitamin B6. It's very simple, and there's no side effects. I would argue that you don't need to lower your cholesterol unless it's below about 300 or 400. But that, we have to go into that a little deeper to explain.
Yeah, and it's like you said, most of the problem is not trying to lower the cholesterol. It's lowering refined foods and the wrong kind of carbohydrates and stuff. Some drugs, though, are really dangerous to get off. And I think they're designed that way as a part of the business plan. But one of the big examples would be antidepressant drugs that they're trying to get all women and whatever men are open to it on those.
Yeah,
they're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's 1 in 6 adults now. It's 1 in 6 adults and 1 in 10 people are on an antidepressant. So that's when you include last year, 2017, there were 2,500 prescriptions written for antidepressants for infants. So 2,500 prescriptions, over 2,500 were written for infants in the United States. That's babies under the age of 1 that are giving antidepressants. And when you look at
there's no empirical test for depression anyway. You just have to say, well, yeah, you're depressed, obviously.
And how does your doctor know if you need Zoloft, or you need Paxil, or you need 20 milligrams, or 30 milligrams, or 10? Or there's no blood test. There's no quantifiable way to know who takes what and who needs how much. And what people don't realize is antidepressants do work in some cases, and they work about as good as the placebo effect. So
which actually is quite valuable, but you don't need the drug to have the placebo effect.
Yeah, that's the best drug of all time is the placebo effect, really.
Yeah,
it's the one that's ever stood the test of time, in my opinion. But
it's got potential that people don't even think about.
I totally agree, and that's the power, like you talk about, of consciousness and the body's ability to heal itself in a lot of cases. But they don't work because the drug actually changes brain chemistry, which we know that brain chemicals are not the reason people are depressed. It's emotions and it's their cognition. It actually works because you're telling the person this is going to help you. Take this and you're going to feel better. So it's the power of that suggestion that seems to be the biggest indicator of whether or not the patient's going to get better.
Yeah, the problem is that a lot of these drugs, including antidepressants, cause what they claim to cure.
Absolutely.
So, little side effects like suicide and homicide and stuff like that from antidepressants.
when I saw a report, I guess it was a couple of years ago, where they dug into the medical history of all the school shooters and the people who had done the mass shootings, and all the ones that they could get the records of, the shooter at Virginia Tech, the Columbine incident, the Amish shooting at the school, at the Amish school. All of those shooters were either on antidepressants or they were suffering the withdrawal symptoms of antidepressants.
Right.
So it seems to me that the reality is people don't do those things unless something is really messing with their brain chemistry.
Yeah.
That may be the canary in the...
And then, there's toxic synergy too, which is more than additive. So if you're on antidepressants and fluoride and toxic food, pesticide residues and EMF interacting with the whole thing. I mean, are you able to tell people a little bit about the EMF and the Wi-Fi and microwave stuff and things like that?
Yeah, that's one area I want to dig deeper in. I don't feel like I'm as educated in that as I am sort of like the chemical world. But it does scare me. I mainly because I don't really know the impact yet. But I know with my daughter, and this is reproducible in my own home. She's 11. When she's on her iPad, she is a totally different kid. We ground her from it for a few days for whatever reason, and it's like her whole personality wakes up and comes out. So
yeah,
the distraction of attention and the EMF waves, I think it does no good to the human brain.
It's really interesting. I mean, those frequencies, not just the magnetic field, but the frequency itself, were successfully weaponized before World War II. And they've chosen the same frequencies to use now. And they're just coming out with a new one, the 5G, which is going to be a lot more intense.
Huh. Yeah, that's what they're advertising as the new cell phone.
It's going to be wonderful. Yeah, you can download 15 movies in 10 seconds. And, the idea is that there's this Internet of Things plan, and that every item on the planet will have a chip, a transmitting chip, an RFID chip. Wow. And will be identified and controllable. I mean, a shirt that you buy, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mark of the beast type thing. Except they're not just restricting it to humans or animals. They're saying everything on the planet.
Clothes, products, whatever.
Everything. And so, theoretically, trees, which will be GMO ideally, and all these things. And so they're trying to make it so that there's no way to avoid it. And they want to beam it from satellites and, in case you're not close enough to a tower and stuff like that. So we have a few things to fix.
Yeah. Sounds like Alzheimer's on demand.
Yeah, and everything else.
Yeah.
So
it's sad. I mean, that really, I feel like an intense sadness when I hear almost the overt and the covert, just the means that society will go to, or the people that are in control of society will go to either make a profit, manipulate people, and people just don't know that really happens. It sounds conspiracy theorist, and I get it. Like, I got the soccer game tonight, and I got to go to church tomorrow, and I got to get the laundry. Like, I got enough to worry about. I don't want to worry about EMF and conspiracy theories, but like, that's the world we live in, and you can bury your head in the sand and hope and pray and cross your fingers and hold your breath, or you can take action and watch podcasts and productions like this to really get educated. So
right, and there would be no point in knowing about all the horrible stuff unless it led to solutions.
Right.
And I think the biggest secret that I've seen anywhere, even considering all these important things that are being hidden, is the potential of human beings that are conscious.
Right.
Because we're generating frequencies too. Not all frequencies are bad.
Yeah.
And we're more powerful than, I don't want to distract us too much, but the frequency that we're generating may be very subtle, but it's really powerful. And I think that's the main thing they're afraid that we might find out.
Yep.
So we should take that as guidance and just, do it.
And I think that the most powerful force in the universe is a human being that's fully alive. Someone who's really... Yeah,
because guess what's flowing through you? It's where you came from. And the potential is pretty much unlimited, I think.
I agree.
So let's go back to what I interrupted, among many things I interrupted, but the one that you were talking about, how people could work with you remote, and whether that would just be individual or potentially later classes that were all virtual, or what you might do with that?
Yeah, so we're in the process of getting all the content that we've ever created. We're trying to piece it and get it into, just to get it out on the web. So if you follow us on Facebook, we're at 180 Chiropractic and Wellness, or Dr. Ben Sweeney. You can find me through both avenues, but we're putting all of our content. We're about a week or two behind that, but we're going to get that out and get as much of that out as we can for free. We're starting a new blog post and email campaign where I initially wanted to give a little bit of information and then try to sell the big package of whatever. And I really had a hard time ethically with that, because people need the information. So we're committed to just kind of giving whatever we know and whatever we got to as many people as we can. And then if you need some help on an individual level, if you want us to go through your health history and your past and your goals, then we'll work with you on an individual level, and we'll figure out a fee system for that. We're still kind of working out the details on that, but I mean, that we work with patients like that remotely in the past. We just haven't had a system set up yet for it, but if the demand is there, then we'll make that work. So
the money issue is really tricky, isn't it? Because
it is.
You try to do things with no involvement of money, and it just, you can't, the way it's set up on this dimension right now, it doesn't work, and you just end up being severely limited in who you can reach. Sure. But the exact way that you generate the money has to feel completely clean.
Right.
And if you can put those together, one thing I think would be great to help people with, in addition to food and all this lifestyle stuff, well, part of lifestyle, really, there's more than 90% of the people in America, and probably a lot of other places, that if they are working, they hate what they're doing for their job. And they just assume that unless you're really a fortunate minority, you're not going to be able to do anything you like or believe in. Right. You just have to do it for money. And most of the really good jobs that pay a lot and have good benefits and stuff are helping destroy the world in some way. Yeah. And it seems like we should be able to reverse that.
I totally agree. I think life is way too short and time is way too precious to do something you don't really love to do. And the beautiful thing about the internet nowadays is you can go to the job that you hate in the short term just to pay the bills, but then do what you love and you want to do in the evenings. Start, exploring content or whatever's in you that God put in you to get out in the world. Get that out into some sort of media, and who knows, maybe that could be your part-time job in 4 or 5 or 10 years. So that's kind of been on my heart too, is to try to figure out a way to get information to people and to sort of build some sort of a following where if we're providing enough impact and giving enough content and helping change enough lives, then maybe there's a bigger picture behind that. So
yeah, there is. So well, and at least that you're going to be getting an income stream to support the other stuff from the actual physical chiropractic work, and also from the online coaching and stuff like that. And it may be able to support a lot of free stuff that you want to do too.
And we need to do what the dentists did back in the 1950s and 60s, where they went into the schools and they taught the kids. They brought in the big toothbrush and the big tooth, and they educated the young people on the value of taking charge of their dental health. And we
learned about Mr. Tooth Decay in the 1950s.
Exactly. And that really changed the game. You reached the kids and you taught them the value and let them take ownership from a very early age. And we got to do the same with nutrition and with consciousness and with exercise and with your nervous system and spinal health. I think teeth are important. I get it. But your nervous system and your brain are more important. So like that education system, and maybe that if we can get enough going, like that's the bigger picture, is we can somehow reach the underserved and reach the children. So I totally
agree. And I think it would be fantastic to get as much of this to kids starting as early as possible.
Yep.
It's kind of a chicken or the egg situation in a way, because you don't want to be fought by the parents,
right?
Who think that you're doing something really bizarre, and you're not even telling them to take drugs or anything. What's wrong with you? And stuff like that.
It's funny you say that. My daughter is in 5th grade, and a kid said the other day, like, you've had shots. Like, I know you've had shots. And she
right.
said, never had shots. And she said, well, you have to have.
Right.
You had to have taken drugs.
And you're alive. You would have polio and smallpox and everything else if you didn't.
there's something wrong. And you had to have taken drugs. And she says, no, I've never taken drugs. And like, so she kind of gets it from an early age, and consequently, and praise God, she's really never been sick. She's had a couple sniffles, but never antibiotics or never anything strong or no hospitalization. So anyway, I think you got to swim upstream, and there's there's got to be some sensitivity behind that where you understand where people are coming from. But there's a part of you that has to say, you know what, the truth is the truth, and I've just got to live in it and let it rip and let the chips fall where they may. Especially when it comes to my own daughter, I'm not gonna bend because it's socially inappropriate. I'm gonna do what's best for her. So.
Do you feel like at this point you're safe in the public schools against them saying, "Oh, well, we're really sorry, but we mistakenly gave everybody injections today"? But we'll try not to do it too much more, you know.
You know, I had that conversation with her that if anybody ever says you have to take this drug or this shot or this thing, you please call us first. Please be aware. Right. Luckily, she's in a great private school that I would hope would never do that. I don't think they would, but yeah, I have a lot of fear. I hear about reports of that all the time where you're basically drugging a kid without parental consent. That's
right.
assault.
What? California is leading the way, as far as I know, and not just with shots, but they're letting kids give consent at age 11 without ever telling the parents, stuff like that.
See, my daughter can't consent to her iPad usage at age 11, much less drugs or chemicals.
Right.
It's bizarro world in a lot of ways. And it's interesting, too, as people seem to get more educated and get more vocal about what they know, the pushback from the system and the drug companies almost seems to be stronger as the resistance gets more formidable, I guess. So. Right.
Yeah, the other thing is, they're definitely trying to make more and more mandatory rules and get rid of medical exemptions and things for vaccines, as you know. And there's
over 110 in the pipeline. I don't know if you knew that.
I think that's conservative. I think there's 200 or 300 minminimum.
It's insane to me.
And they want them for adults, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, now they know that most parents are only going to tolerate so many more for their kids. Now they're going to find a new market, which...
Yeah, and then once the parents are, injected enough, they'll kind of soften up the resistance, too, because they won't be able to think anymore.
Well, that'll be an interesting...
They've already developed vaccines for stress, which is what that means. So you just be pliable and everything. I don't know. I think we need to be definitely using our time well to work on solutions.
Yep.
Because it's not enough just to know what not good things are happening.
I totally agree.
You also mentioned sickness a couple minutes ago. And one of the things that I think would be really good for people to learn is that sickness, with that general term, doesn't always mean something that should be suppressed.
Right.
Yeah. How do you teach people about that? You know what I mean? Like, if the body's trying to throw out garbage by having a cold or the so-called flu, then you don't want to shove it back in deeper with drugs.
Or suppress that mechanism. Yeah, I mean, a fever is your body's way of heating itself up to kill off invading bugs and germs and organisms. It's actually a very brilliant response by the body, knowing what to do at the right time. Yeah. Swelling, inflammation on a sprained ankle or a sprained wrist is the body sending the healing to the area. Coughing and sneezing is the primary way of getting particles out of the lungs and the upper respiratory tract. So your saliva and snot, your body knows what to do, and it's very intelligent, and it's been doing it for years. It's almost it's just crazy to me that we think now that we're smarter than the body, when the body knows exactly what to do at any given time. So I discourage patients from over-checking their child's fever because it's always either on the way up or on the way down. It's always cyclical. So when you check it, it's either on its way up or you check that it's on its way down. So it's either higher before or it's on its way to getting higher. So we know that your brain controls the body. That's pretty basic anatomy, that your brain is the first organ to form in utero. It's the first system, and then your spinal cord develops off of it. It's like the tree trunk, the branches, and then all the fruit that grows off, which is the organs and the tissues. So if your brain's able to tell your body how to work right, then you have your best chance at optimal health and optimal healing. So the nerve that leaves the top of our neck goes to the sinuses, and it goes to the eyes, ears, nose, and throat, and also to the head. The lower part of the neck, it goes to the shoulders and arms, and also the thyroid and the heart. And then your lower back, they go to the digestive and reproductive organs and legs. So with chiropractic, the spinal column is literally like the circuit breaker of the body. And when stress overrides the system, your body will essentially blow a fuse, and it can compress that nerve that goes to your shoulder, your arm, your head, or your heart, thyroid, or your heart. So our job is very simple. It's just like at your home, when you turn the switch back or remove the circuit, it helps to restore function to whatever the nerve is controlling. So we tell people not to suppress symptoms. They're kind of like the dashboard light on the automobile. So when you get a headache, or you have a sinus problem, or you have a shoulder pain, it's your body telling you what's wrong. It's giving you information. Taking drugs is like putting duct tape over the oil light. So it's I understand why you do it, but it's not the right solution.
Yeah, I mean, now everything's called a preventable disease.
Right.
So you can stop every symptom. And in fact, if you don't, you're endangering society.
Right. And as if living with no symptoms would even make logical sense. I mean, it's like living with no dashboard, or driving your car without any kind of indicators when the oil's low, or the engine's smoking, or
So do you think, like you said, you had your kids in a really good private school, do you think they would let you come in and teach some of this stuff?
You know, I've mentioned to a couple people that I'm open to that. I've been invited to speak at a couple science classes. I would love to do that. After doing this, I may be compelled to reach out and try to push that issue a little bit more.
I'd love to hear what happened if you do that.
Yeah,
that's something that could be spread out.
Or you teach my daughter how to teach everybody else too. That'd be
right. Well, I mean, you have to clone yourself in some way, because if it works in one little class, you can't do 100,000 classes yourself.
No.
Although
go ahead.
You might make a recorded program for them now.
Right, and maybe some sort of a children's book for a very young age, or maybe some sort of a cartoon maybe thing for kindergarten age, and then something for middle school and high school. That's a brilliant idea.
I don't think anyone's doing that yet.
Not that I'm aware of.
Maybe they're intimidated that they'll never be let in or something.
I don't know. Maybe that's what comes from this.
It might not be true. There might be an opening for that, at least in the good private schools.
Yeah. I'll try that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. What would you want people to go away from this discussion with, to, really digest and then use in their own lives, leading to everything else?
Maybe just the basic understanding that their body is powerful, that their health is their greatest asset, and that it's on us to make better health decisions and to get the most out of our health and out of our body. So we've got to be empowered, and getting healthier is way simpler than most people think it is. It's a few simple steps. Most people I meet are literally on the verge of having amazing health. If they would make just a couple key changes, their energy gets better, and their mood and their sleep and their libido and their relationships and life just kind of gets so much better and easier and happier and healthier. So I just encourage people to realize that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you've got it inside of you. Your body's designed to be healthy. We just got to help it live to its potential. So maybe that's the takeaway. What
about if they're not physically close enough to somebody they think is a really good chiropractor? How much can they fill in for that with, like, yoga, foundation training, or other stuff like that? Or if you look up foundation training on YouTube, the site is right there. Yoga is fantastic. Pilates, they now blend kind of yoga lattes, or Pilates or whatever they call that, where they blend the two together. There's personal training, there's physical therapists, there's all kinds of things we can do to move in that direction. There's a network of chiropractors that we work with all over the country. It's called Maximized Living. So if you go to maximizedliving.com, you can put in your zip code, and it will send you to an office that's similar or very, very closely resembles what we do in our own office. Mm-hmm. And if you have questions, you can always email me, and I'll help find a chiropractor that's near you. We'll be happy to help any way we can with that. That would be neat. And what email address is good for that?
Mine is backdoc@comcast.net. So it's BACKDOC@comcast.net. Backdoc.
All right. Neat. Well, I think you've covered so much. It's like a whole course, that people could really get a lot out of. And I would encourage anybody to get in touch with you on that email address. And tell me again, what's the best website and Facebook page for people
so the
to look
website is it's 180 Well. So the number 180, or it's 180 Chiropractic. So it's to help turn people's health around 180 degrees. So 180well.com.
Okay.
And that's the Facebook link as well.
180 Well.
And then our phone number is 615-595-9063.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds neat. Well, it'd be fun to stay in touch with you and see how these online options develop, and maybe we can help let more people know about it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me on and just taking the time. I love what you're doing with your project, and after talking with you the other day, like the heart that you have behind it that's why I felt good about coming on this show. And I've come on others before where it felt a little more, there was a little something behind it I didn't like, but this one felt great. And
yeah, I think we have the same motive, I just want people to feel better and have a better life.
Yep.
That'd be a good start. So, all right, well, hold on. We'll say goodbye in the break here, and we'll see you all soon.